Well, welcome back to Creative Excuses, where we make excuses to be creative out of the video games that we play. We're back with another build video, a sort of update to my old Ice Mage Elsa build that has been my most popular build video ever, with over 5,000 views when I only have like 300 subs. Pretty crazy. This is one of the two spiritual successors to that build, and this is the better of the successors. This is your queen, the High Status Warden. Remember though, this video is not a guide for the sets, skills, or any of that. For the detailed guide, check the video description where you'll find a link to the build on Outcast's build editor on ESOhub.com. Instead, for the rest of the video, I'm going to walk you through how this build just works. It's like a beautiful puzzle where every piece holds together every other piece. Before we jump in though, go ahead and hit that like button for more fun build videos like this one. It really helps the channel out and pumps me up in the YouTube algorithm, and is really encouraging. Also, if you ever want to hang out or just chat about my builds or videos or whatever else, I live stream over on twitch.tv/creativeexcuses. Right now on Wednesdays, my wife Shelby and I are playing through Spider-Man Remastered on PC together, and then on Thursdays and Sundays I play ESO, mostly making and testing builds, banging my head against a wall soloing dungeons, sometimes without an interface, and hosting a dragon hunting event every week. I'd love to see you there. Alright, let's jump into it. Every solo build needs some glue, something to hold the build together and make it work. Usually, this glue is something overpowered in some way, something you can abuse. If you watch a lot of Hack the Minotaur videos, you'll notice that he uses the skill Brawler a lot because of its absolutely busted damage shield. The damage shield holds his playstyle together quite often because it affords so much survivability and area of effect damage with just one skill. If you watch Lucky Ghost, his solo builds almost always use the Ring of the Pale Order for the same reason. That mythic item just gives you so much healing because it rewards you for building so much damage. And so, you just build more damage and it makes the build work. I am convinced that every good solo build needs something that is just absolutely brokenly strong to make sure it works for the hardest content in the game. So what is this build's glue? Honestly, I think I'm abusing not one, not two, but three different really overpowered things, and that's why this build works so well, while staying so simple. So what are those three things? Number one, the Warden's Bear Ultimate. Number two, heavy attacks. And number three, the Oakensoul Ring. These three things on their own are pretty busted. They aren't quite as busted as the Ring of the Pale Order, or even as a meta DPS loadout like the Whirl of Depths and Pillar of Nirn that you see on every other build video. But do not be fooled. These three things are amazing on their own. Put them together though, and it's just insane. So why is the Bear Ultimate so powerful? It's just a pet that deals some damage and has a cheap execute, right? Exactly. That's already pretty nuts, right? It's a pet that just sits there and hits crap for you. It deals a ton of damage. Just look at these combat metrics from a 3 million dummy parse. When using the bleed damage bear, you can see that the light attack from the bear is doing a crap ton of damage. The bear's heavy attack is doing almost as much damage. And then all of that hemorrhaging damage is coming from the bear too. The bear is doing a ton. But do you notice something weird here? I didn't actually cast the ultimate at all. Yeah, that's just the bear sitting there doing nothing. The bear is just hanging out. I didn't do anything with it. No ult casts. Just get the bear out, let it go wild, like a wild guardian, and wham bam, look at how much damage it's doing. The fact that I never have to spend ultimate in order to get this much damage out of the bear is why this thing is so busted. Could I get more damage out of it if I did cast the ability? Sure, I definitely could. It's a strong instant cast hit with a really strong execute. But this isn't a DPS build. This is a solo build. And you know what solo build's like? Healing. Lots and lots of healing. But the bear doesn't heal us, right? Wrong. See this beautiful little champion point here? This is an extra 1500 health recovery before buffs that we can have for free because we never have to cast our ultimate. If we take a potion that gives us 30% increased health recovery, this becomes an extra 2000 health recovery. And if we get the minor version of that same buff for another 15%, this one passive champion point becomes almost 2200 health recovery. That is 1k healing per second, just sitting there from our bear ultimate, and 1 slottable champion point just because we don't have to cast the bear ult. No other class can abuse this champion point like this. Other classes have to give up some really important part of their kit in order to use this, but the Warden only has to give up a very small amount of damage compared to what they can normally do if they're just casting the bear on cooldown. It's busted, and I would hate to see this nerfed, honestly. It's such a cool concept. Thanks to this ultimate and this champion point especially, after our buff food and a few other buffs, we are actually able to hit 4,000 health recovery on the build. We're healing 4,000 every 2 seconds, and over half of that is thanks to the bear. Thanks, bear. So that's one part of the glue. Lots and lots of healing and damage just for slotting and forgetting your beautiful bear pet. The second part of the glue is heavy attacks. Now, I have to admit, normally heavy attacks are not overpowered. They are usually a DPS loss to do, so the best builds out there build their sustain in a way that lets them never have to heavy attack. The only time they are normally worth using is on healers and tanks. On healers, heavy attacks are great because they give restoration staff users a ton of Magicka sustain, so they can keep casting those expensive burst heals when you stand in stupid, and they give major mending, which makes those big burst heals heal you even more when you stand in really stupid. Awesome. On tanks, heavy attacks are also pretty useful as a sustain tool, especially when they need some stamina back for blocking. On solo builds, heavy attacks can still be useful for sustain. Solo builds also need to cast those big, juicy burst heals, because we are the stupid and everywhere we stand is going to be some incoming damage. Burst heals or shields cost a lot of resources, so heavy attacks help sustain that when the big hits from bosses come in. But if that's where it ends, then we'll be a nice and tanky solo build with basically 0 damage, right? Wrong again, but we'll get there in a second. The second way that heavy attacks are busted is that lightning staffs have 2 amazing effects. The first is that lightning staff heavy attacks make their heavy attacks area of effect. This means that if there are 2 enemies being hit, your heavy attack now deals double damage and is extra valuable. If there are 3, then you're tripling the value of your heavy attack. 4 quadruples it, and so on. You can get a metric ton of value out of your heavy attack when there are lots of enemies to hit. The second effect that lightning staff heavies have is that they are channeled and they have 4 hits, with each of those hits counting as a heavy attack. That doesn't sound busted, but believe me, it is. See, there are sets in the game like Sergeant's Mail, which once stacked up, add up to 3,000 added damage to your heavy attacks. That 3,000 damage gets added to every single one of our heavy attack ticks, which means the lightning staff is actually going to get 12,000 extra heavy attack damage out of Sergeant's Mail. 12,000. That's before buffs like crits, or the juiciest buffs of all, off balance and empower. With just Sergeant's Mail, your heavies would already be pretty strong. Add in off balance, which our lightning staff gives us access to, and your heavy attacks during off balance would be hitting like that mom car SUV down the street. Add in empower, and you are melting stuff. Off balance and empower are the 2 strongest percentage damage boosts in the game, tied with a high crit and high crit damage build, but they're only boosting our heavies. However, they still stack with critical damage. That is insane. Oh, and did I mention that Sergeant's Mail, which is one of our best DPS sets in this case, is also giving us a bunch of health recovery and extra health to further augment our bear? No? Well, it does. Sergeant's Mail fits the health recovery nature of this build so well, it's like it was planned. The combination is incredible. Now, there's a problem here. Empower. That 80% heavy attack damage buff is a beautiful thing, and Wardens do not have access to it. So how are we going to get it? I already told you the answer. Our third bit of glue. Oakensoul. Now, Oakensoul took a decent nerf in Update 35, which made my Nature Spirit Elsa build cry and hide from her sister for like 10 years before she eventually froze her heart. But this build loves the Oakensoul changes. Sure, we lost a few buffs, but we gained Empower. But Empower on Oakensoul is not the only reason to run it here. Oakensoul is almost flawless on this build, if I'm honest. Let's look at the buffs it gives and why they're so insanely powerful here. First, it's going to give us our standard weapon and spell damage buffs and our standard weapon and spell critical buffs. What do these buffs do for us? First, they make our damage better. Sure, whatever. More importantly, they allow us to use a different potion than a spell damage potion. In other words, these buffs on Oakensoul free us to use tri-stat potions, which will give us that massive health recovery buff, enabling us to hit that 4,000 health recovery mark. Amazing. What else? What else? Oh, there's Minor Slayer and Minor Berserk, freeing up a slot on the bar so we don't need to run Bird of Prey, and it frees up a set so we don't need a trial set for Minor Slayer. Though, honestly, I'd rather be using a trial set and have Major Berserk here, but whatever. This lets us run whatever second set we want instead of a trial set. In my case, I'm using Grave Inevitability for that 20% crit damage and the super cool sounding proc effect that fits the Warden beautifully. Oh, is that Minor Protection and Minor Aegis? That's 10-ish% damage reduction, which we can stack on top of the Warden's wonderfully buffed access to Chilled, which has Minor Maim, so we're already at like 15% damage reduction, and we can get to 25% if we don't need the extra healing and can slot Revealing Flare in our flex spot instead. Oh, is that all 3 minor recovery buffs? That health recovery buff also helps us hit that 4,000 health recovery mark, and the stamina recovery buff helps us sustain our roll dodging even better. Minor Mending, that's going to make our big burst heal from Arctic Blast bigger and burstier, and will make our Leeching Vines heal even more when we need it to. Minor Courage, that's neat and buffs all of our everything. Major Resolve, more damage reduction. The only buff we aren't using is the Minor Heroism. So basically, we're using and abusing every single buff on this ring except for one. Oakensoul is super powerful, and it complements so much of this build, especially the heavy attacking and the health recovering. All in, the Bear Ultimate, the heavy attack focus, and the Oakensoul ring combine to make one of the most powerful builds, if not the most powerful build I have ever made. This build almost effortlessly runs through veteran Vateshran Hollows and can solo even some veteran DLC dungeons. I don't have a single other build after update 35 that can solo vet DLC dungeons as well as this one right now. Though hopefully I will soon, so stay tuned and get subscribed. Most solo builds use one ridiculously overpowered item, mechanic, or skill to get things done. And here we've used 3 that fit together like a well-oiled machine. Alright everyone, thanks for sticking around for this one. If you liked the video, go ahead and like the video. It helps the channel out a ton, and while you're down there, drop a comment letting me know what kinds of broken mechanics you've found. I'm in search of some more so that I can make more builds like this one. Until then, I'll see you all in the next excuse.